We arrived in Bobcaygeon in the year 2000, and Trinity and Providence were the first congregations that I had served. So I made all my mistakes with those two congregations, and the people were gracious and taught me many things, and we had a lot of laughs. I would say that Bobcaygeon church was easy to serve. I love seniors because as a retirement community, there was this steady flow of retired people into the community, and so every month someone new would show up, and the congregation would welcome folks and provide hospitality, and there was so many good meals and a lot of laughter. One of the things that I brought with me was the idea of a house church or small groups, and so we started several house groups over the years, and some of them would last as long as a Lent study, 8 weeks, and I think some of them are still going. And I always appreciated those small gatherings. What else? Providence Church was such a joy to be a part of. It was so popular for people to come and visit. So there were always people who would show up for, a little taste of the old time country church, a bit of nostalgia. So in Providence, my rule was don't change a thing. Keep it the way it was. And even when they were offered a free set of Voices United, they turned them down in favor of the old blue hymnaries. And the Christmas celebrations and skits that we had there, the church was always packed and warm and lots of laughter. And the 2 meetings a year we had at Providence, in Joyce Junkin's living room, where always a treat. We got through with the business and then got on with the snacks before we all headed home. One of my favorite memories was the year of the NHL strike. That the following fall of the NHL strike, we had 9 baptisms. So you figured that out. I think that was some kind of a record, and it was so great. And that was the beginning of our, it really gave a boost to our children's church. And we did all kinds of things and experimented with the children's church, and lots of fun there. So, and then for the 150th anniversary, we wanted to do something special. We started planning a year ahead of time, and we invited John and Thea Patterson to come. They had done a visioning and planning with a lot of different groups. I asked John, have you ever done it with the congregation? And that sounded like a new challenge. So we cleared out all the chairs in the sanctuary and set up table groups, and John led us in a series of conversations. And I remember at the very beginning, the comments, the feedback were, we're tired, we're doing too much, we're too busy, we don't have energy for anything more. But John somehow inspired us to really have conversations about what was on our hearts. And he started with looking at the world and our concerns and those things we were most passionate about. And what emerged were 7 different visions for streams for the future. And of course, one of them was celebrating the history and those great murals that Robert Milner gathered people together to paint. And that was so. It was amazing. With a little inspiration, how people could find what they needed. So, yeah, I was there 10 years, and my family and I were treated so well, and yeah, I'll always look back fondly on our time on the island of Bobcaygeon. So thanks for listening. Okay. So I asked Debbie to come back because there was a couple of other stories, although I'm reluctant to start mentioning individuals because there's so many. But as I was saying, I was a green minister, and it was such a gift to have Sandra Shell in the church office as the church secretary, because I was brand new to Bobcaygeon, but Sandra had grown up there. And so she knew everyone who had lived in Bobcaygeon. And so if I was asked to do a funeral, she could give me the background, who they were related to, the dirt and all the good news about the family and all of the connections in Bobcaygeon. So that was such a gift. And big shoes to fill, but Sue stepped up to it and did a great job making that church office a place where people wanted to drop by and visit. And the other real gift was the fact that there were 4 retired ministers, United Church ministers, in the congregation. Stan Parkhouse, my father, David Reeve, Dale Davis, and Murray. Walter Murray. And so we would have a lunch once a month, and I got to listen to their stories and their laughter, and what a gift that was to get their collective wisdom. And and I got a chance to correct it. It wasn't Joyce Junkin's living room that we had the Providence meetings at. It was Merle Junkin's farmhouse where we had them. And of course, Joyce Junkin was there when I arrived, and we lost that pillar of the church. So many others, too many to name. But anyway, thanks, Debbie, for letting me do a PS.
Bonjour, Dejnikos Rodney, Bob Cadjoin Donjaba. So I'm Rodney Smith-Merkley, and I'm the minister now at Curve Lake and Wesley United Churches, Buckhorn Pastoral Charge. But I was Trinity's minister. I guess it's going to be 2 years ago, pretty shortly, that I changed pastoral relationships. And I was your minister for 6.5 years. And I continue to live in Bobcaygeon by the shallow rapids here, as I was introducing myself in an Anishinaabe way, the way they do it at Curve Lake. So I want to wish you happy anniversary. This is Zoe, by the way. We want to wish you a happy anniversary. I'm sure you weren't expecting to spend your 160th this way, but lots of fond memories of my time as your minister at Trinity in Providence. Was speaking with Suzanne this morning, and of course lots of great memories of our kids growing up. They were just small when we arrived, and the teenagers now, the boys at high school in Weldon and Fenelon Falls. Petra's in grade 6 at Bobcaygeon Public School, just turned 11, so lots of changes there. Everybody's well. Suzanne is teaching online through the virtual high school and enjoying that. And yeah, it's just all consuming right now. Suzanne was saying she remembers a lot of the Sunday school Christmas presentations and other dramas that they did through Children's Church, has good memories, and of course a lot of time spent eating the chili cook-offs and Nicolette's cakes, and big surprise that I would remember some of those things. Ministry where I am now, much smaller congregations. I want to say I appreciated working with all the committees at Trinity and Providence. The churches are much more Providence size where I am now. But just to say that you're very special folks, and of course the relationships continue. I continue to see some of you, and others wonder if I'm living in town, but I am, and so yeah, just glad to catch up with some of you who I'm not seeing, and just to say I appreciate continuing to live here and want to support you in any way I can in your ministries. I've enjoyed meeting your new minister, Reverend Andrew. Anybody who can fly on a carpet is the right kind of guy to have in these pandemic times. So look forward to ongoing relationship with him and with you. A personal joy I'll share has been sailing in the last year and a bit. I've really enjoyed sailing, so that's been good for my spirit. I've also just started my second year of the Jubilee Spiritual Direction Program, so that's a bit of my news. I continue to work for the region as Minister for Indigenous Justice and Respectful Relations, and I'm a member of the Bob Cajun Truth and Reconciliation community, so perhaps that's another area that we can have ongoing work together. So happy anniversary, every blessing to all my friends at Trinity and Providence.
My name is Bob Root. On a sunny Friday afternoon, I'm being filmed and grateful for that. I'm here at the beach park, and I'm delighted to be able to say happy 160th birthday to you. It's a great milestone to be celebrating, and you're finding good ways to do it even in COVID days, so well done. I wanted to tell you how it was I came to Trinity Church. Started probably 5 years or so ago. I was fairly newly retired. I was looking for a church home. Rodney and I had become friends, and he said, "Come to Trinity, we'd be glad to see you." So I decided to do that one Sunday morning. Made my way over, and I came in through the doors, and the first person who greeted me at the door was Sandra Keeble, who was always in the narthex with a warm smile and her bright eyes. And Sandra made me feel very, very welcome. And so did everybody else that I met that day. And over time, I started to kind of settle in, and I'd try out different parts of the church just to see what it felt like to sit in a different seat. And everywhere people were welcoming to me. And so it was that I came to find a church home. And then I started to learn about your ministry to each other, and also out into the community and your good support for mission and service and outreach. And I was so impressed by that, because it seems to me that the church is not for ourselves alone, but for what we can do for one another and for creation. As time went on, Rodney went on sabbatical, and I was invited to fill in half-time for that 3-month period. And we had a great time together in that fall. It was the fall of 2017, and lots of good memories come out of that time. And then when he left at the end of 2018, you invited me to help you say goodbye to him and stay with you until we were able to say hello to Andrew. And what a joy that's been in my life. I learned very quickly from that deeper involvement that you wanted not just to keep the doors open, you wanted to keep moving forward in your faithful ministry. And that was a wonderful thing to be part of. You took on that good and challenging work of affirming, not easy to do when there's a space between full-time ministry, but you did it, and you're still doing it well. The outreach into the community continued in good ways. The prayer circle supports everybody on their journey. There's just all kinds of good things that were happening that I was thrilled to be a part of for that period of time. So it's great to look back on some of those things and to give thanks for those. When I think of 160 years, I think of faithfulness and determination that invited your ancestors in the faith, first of all, to form a community, and then to build a building so that you could be the church and the witness of that, and then to continue through the years. And so it's a great thing. They've had their challenges over time as well, as the church in every age has. And that reminds me that faithfulness is a daily commitment. And so I wish you every blessing in this 160th anniversary and Providence's 130th anniversary. I wish you God's continued presence in your lives, and that Spirit may lead you all the way. So thank you for listening, and happy anniversary.
Hello, my name is Sue Zulke Ward, and I am very blessed to be the secretary or office administrator here for Trinity and Providence United Churches. And the reason I feel blessed is because I am so lucky that I can see all the activity and everything that happens around here. Sometimes this place is like a revolving door, and that's great and fantastic because it's not only the church adherents and members that are so active, but we're also active in the community. And so one of the stories that is near and dear to my heart is when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. It was like a real big shock to me, but the church here was supporting me. Even though I didn't come here to church, I went to another church. They supported me so well because there were 13 people who volunteered to look after the office while I was getting my treatments. And that to me speaks volumes. And people brought food to our home, and the prayer circle, but they prayed for me. And the pastoral care team, they presented me with this beautiful shawl, prayer shawl that people prayed over. And when I went for my treatments, my chemo and that room was so cold, but when I put that beautiful prayer shawl around me, like that was just like everyone here was hugging me and keeping me warm. And so that's just one little aspect that happens here at Trinity, is that everybody that enters these doors are welcome, and they are just treated with decency and respect, and it doesn't matter who you are, whether you are a part of the congregation, whether you are not part of the congregation. And so I'm so blessed to see even the UCW women working in the kitchen. They're laughing, enjoying themselves as they're making pies, meat pies for people. And there's so much going on all the time. And so when this COVID hit, you know, it was a shock to all of us, but even though our church doors were closed, there was still so much activity and caring going on here behind the closed doors with the people at Trinity. All of a sudden, like the prayer circle, they were praying not only for our own congregation and adherents, but for our community and for the world at large. And the pastoral care team, they got together and they created a phone list so they could phone people and make sure they were okay and see if there was anything that they could do. And I was still getting out the Friday file, and in the Friday file we had posted worship services that you could see over YouTube to keep us connected, and there was coffee hour through Zoom to keep us all connected, and the caring and loving that went on, and people coming into the church and cleaning it up and preparing for the time when we can all come back here again and be together as a congregation. And so I feel so very, very blessed to be able to be a part of the Trinity United Church family. And I think that is so very special. And so I wish for Trinity and for Providence to have another 160 years plus. And I'm sure that will happen if we keep going the same direction and we put God first and we care about each other and welcome everyone with open arms. So thank you so much for letting me.
As you know, our congregation recognizes the first Sunday in November as the anniversary of the founding of this church 160 years ago. Unfortunately, we do not have an account of the first service held in the original building, now known as Trinity Hall. We're not even sure when the first service took place. When the doors did open, the building crew of 4 young men, led by Thomas Taylor, who still has descendants in our congregation, age 35 it was. They must have felt pleased and maybe even relieved, since none of them had ever built a church before. But the roof was on, the single-pane windows were installed, the candle holders had been attached to the walls, and the backless benches were put in place. We'll never know how many of the 35 local families who had signed up to be members of Bob Cajun's first house of worship were actually there the first day. But we do know that these founding families were all immigrants or the children of immigrants. And like immigrants through our history, they had taken the biggest gamble of their lives coming here. Almost everything in this land was new to them, including the fact that they were often without the benefit of clergy. That changed with the arrival of Methodist preachers who traveled here on horseback and throughout the fledgling settlement. They began converting those who back in the British Isles had been baptized or married as Presbyterians, Baptists, or Anglicans. From the time of their first days here, many of the settlers had never been in a church, some for almost 30 years, since there were no churches in the area until this one was built in the early 1860s. And even after the Bob Cajun Church was available, not everyone in the township could travel a long distance to attend services. So eventually, 7 country churches were added to the circuit: Bethel, Eden, St. David's, St. John's, Zion, and Fairburn, which, thanks to the Humphreys family, was donated to Settlers Village, where it still is. And of course, Providence, on the road to Fenelon Falls, which is 130 years old this year, and the only survivor of those 7 country churches. 10 years ago, when we were celebrating our 150th anniversary, their histories were all collected, and the original sites of those 7 churches were marked. Those vibrant congregations who for a number of years had enriched the spiritual life of their rural neighborhoods. In a way, you at home during this global pandemic may identify with this. Not being able to worship as a congregation in the normal way for the last 7 to 8 months has been a challenge. But thanks be to God for Reverend Andrew and his backup technical staff and others who have shepherded us through these unusual times. Sadly, because of COVID-19, we cannot gather together to celebrate our rich church history. I once asked my father, who was born during the influenza epidemic of 1918, if his parents or grandparents had ever recalled how they had survived that disease which took millions worldwide. He could not remember any mention of it, maybe because deadly diseases, especially those afflicting children, were still commonplace back then. Typhoid fever, swamp fever, cholera, TB, diphtheria, to name a few, plagued almost every household at some point in our area. A family on Burry's Green Road lost a mother and 3 daughters in 1 year. A woman on a farm on the road to Kinmount buried her husband and 6 of her 15 children before she died. These were members of our church, and quarantine and tragedy are not new experiences in the history of this church. We are aware that some of you church members are dealing with the virus epidemic all on your own. In earlier times, it was unusual for older folks to live by themselves. Back then, there were no retirement residence or nursing homes in Bobcaygeon. When it was no longer possible for the elderly to live independently, it was up to their family to take care of them. Matthew Ingram, one of the earliest families in the area, and Joyce, who read the scriptures, descendant of him, in his last will and testament stated, quote, "In the event of my wife Susan Ingram surviving me, she is to be maintained and supported in a manner satisfactory to herself as long as she may live." And old Mr. John Stinson, who with his sons farmed the road across from Providence and lived for over 100 years, he spent his last years rotating from each of the homes of his 4 children who lived in the Bobcaygeon area. When he tired of one household, he just picked up and moved on to the next. And the 2 spinster daughters of Samuel McClelland, our very first Sunday school superintendent, lived with and cared for him until he died. And through all of this, their faith remained strong, and the family unit kept together. Of this we can be sure, that through the years, this church has served as a spiritual refuge, a place of friendly support, and a source of community outreach during good times and the bad times. With the help of God, may we continue to do so in the days ahead. Happy anniversary.
Oh, give me a place where a church glows with grace, and the old and the young learn to play. May Trinity be where we all are set free, and our faith is not cloudy all day. Home, home in our church, with no colors or creeds seen as wrong, where seldom is heard a discouraging word, and all orientations belong. At 160 years